So this is the drive that I'm going to be testing with. Let's see if I can... I think you should be able to see that. I'll have to look on the video when I actually get it for editing. But so this is a Seagate Barracuda. It is dated 2019. It's not the fastest drive out, but it's not quite ancient. But this is substantially less of a drive capability-wise than the drive that I advocated to be putting your games on. I was recommending newer, modern enterprise grade, like the Exos 18s that I have my NAS server built on. But I wanted to test with a more extreme case, since a lot of the people that may be doing this are going to be people without the resources to buy an 18 terabyte drive. And it also gives you kind of a baseline to say, okay, it's definitely going to be better than this if you use something newer, enterprise grade. So I'm just going to be setting it here. I'm honestly, for those who freak about this stuff, I'm really not worried. I was originally going to be using this. Gosh darn it. I should probably do this way. Run that down there. Okay. So for those of you that are wondering why I'm not using a lower end computer, so I already tested this on a lower end computer and it worked fine. My suspicion is that this is going to fall apart at higher resolutions. I could be wrong on that, though, and I needed a higher end build. Is it good? Yeah, we're good. Okay, so I needed a higher end build to be able to really crank it. I want to see what it does at 4K, and obviously with this build with the 4090 and the 13900K, I can do that. So I want to see. I want to see if it falls apart. Now, I was expecting this as a recommendation mostly for people running a 1440p setup, maybe even 1080, but we'll see. Because I am saying I think it's a good idea for people with higher end systems like this too, to have a large hard drive for storage of your older games and even some newer ones. I mean, come on. Cyberpunk 2077 explicitly says we do not support hard drive anymore and strongly recommends an SSD. So let's see just how necessary that is. Let's get to it. Okay, so just so there's no funny business, so no one claims that I'm full of crapola. So, we're going to verify that I am in fact running this off of a hard drive. So, properties. This is, for any of you that want to look this up, this is the Seagate ST500DM009 blah blah blah. You want to look that up and prove that it's a drive, so be it. So there's that. And then I'm going to navigate into this drive. The only thing on this drive is Cyberpunk 2077. And we are going to actually load it off of the drive so you know that I didn't just click on a link to something on an SSD. So let's load it. So this will give us the basic entry of the game. And then once it gets past this, come on. Once it gets past this, so you know we're in it, I am going to do the actual load of the game with it captured through my capture card so you can see a little bit better. So normally you push the little press space to continue down there. And we will have data up in the top right there, as usual. And yeah, let's get to it and see how it runs. Okay, so here we are. And let's see how, I think the biggest claim that anyone has is that, oh, it's going to take forever to load your games. Let's find out. So first, let's get into the main part of the game. Okay, now I want to show you guys, we are running, it's basically maxed out. We're running all of the stuff. DLSS, oops, and I don't want that. I want it in DLSS quality. Okay. Frame generation is on. Everything's turned all the way up. I usually turn that up. I need to mess with that sometime and see how much of a difference it makes, but whatever. Path tracing. Path tracing on. Crowd density high. Field of view max. Settings are all completely pegged. So, let's see what we get. So we're going to continue. So this is real time. Now, I'm not going to lie. It might have loaded faster on an SSD. Was that, come on, that was like 10 seconds. 10 freaking seconds. Okay, I got to dump, oops, wrong thing. I got to dump some stuff here. Unfortunately, once you have too much stuff, it bitches at you. See, nothing is running sluggish here. This is actually really surprising to me. I did look at this once, but no one's going to believe me unless I actually demo it. Okay. Now, I am expecting a hiccup here or there that might be obviously storage related. But come on. Anyone that tries to claim that there is a problem here is only saying that because they want to say there's a problem because it's on a hard drive. This is 100% running off the hard drive. My OS is running off of I believe, maybe a 2 terabyte Crucial P3. So it's not. So I never advocated that people run their primary OS off of a hard drive. I never said to do that. Never once. I said to run your OS off of a small medium performance M.2. I said have a larger, depending on what you can afford. I recommended a mid-grade 4 terabyte because they're about $200 now. I know that's a lot for some people, but we were comparing the potential for purchasing, like, say, a 4 terabyte, like, super high performance. So like one of those new 13 or 14,000 or whatever speed Gen 5 drives. That was the baseline we were looking at. So I'm recommending this instead of going that route. And if you're looking at one of those, we're comparing with that. And so you could get all 3 of these drives, except you wouldn't be running off of a 500. I was only advocating the hard drive for older games that didn't say they needed an SSD. But this is a newer game. And just so we're clear, this is not cherry-picked. The reason why I chose this game is because it was the first game that came to mind that I could think of that explicitly stated they do not support hard drive and they want you to run off of an SSD. This game explicitly states that, and again, it was the first one that came to mind, so this is the one I used. I'm sure there's others. I'm sure there might be a game that is more dependent, but so let's do this. Let's go to a completely different part of the city. The reason I want to do that is because I'm expecting, see, like that slight stutter. But if you get that once every couple of minutes, I'm sorry, you're not going to convince me that this is a big deal. Not unless we're trying to say, okay, this versus the absolute best possible experience you could have, which I'm not claiming it is. I'm not claiming it's the absolute best. But keep in mind, this is a nearly maxed out gaming desktop. This is faster than most of you are running. There might be a few of you running hardware like this, but most of you are not. Most of you are running lower end hardware at a lower resolution. So I'm expecting that we may get a hiccup when we transition to a new area, but I'm not sure what the actual areas are as far as texture loading, for example. Oops, I'm trying not to kill anyone because I don't want NCPD to harass me. Now, I will say, I do feel that way in real life. You know, sometimes I'm driving the streets of Seattle and I would otherwise run someone over, but I sit there thinking to myself, I really don't want Seattle PD to harass me. So that's really the only thing that keeps me from running people down in the streets of Seattle. So all of you should be aware. Oop, dang it. Looks like we may have gotten a little bit of micro stuttering. Now, also keep in mind, this is a substantially lower end hard drive than I have been advocating to use. This is worst case scenario. I advocated a modern high performance, high capacity SSD. This is, I think, a 6-year-old. I think the date on the drive was 2019, so we're talking an almost 6-year-old drive, 500 gig standard Seagate Barracuda, which isn't a bad drive, but it's not the high-performance modern drive that I was recommending. The other option that I had also been recommending was potentially getting several small cheap drives and going RAID. So 3 or 4, like 2 or 3 terabyte, maybe 4 terabyte drives if you can get them for 20 or 30 bucks off your local market, and just going RAID, because then you get the same data transfer speed, pretty damn close to a 2.5 SATA SSD. Now, certainly it's worth mentioning, trying to go RAID, you may have some other issues. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw micro stuttering, though I don't have enough experience running games in RAID off of the RAID drive to know for sure. Okay, so let's do one other thing. Let's take a look at what happens when we run. See, I thought the issue was going to be running higher res. Maybe my understanding is wrong. So let's run 1080p and see if that makes any difference. Oh, look, Cyberpunk running max settings 200 FPS. That's pretty funny. No, it doesn't look like it. And this is actually more vindication than I was expecting. I was actually expecting to routinely see we saw a couple minor hitches, but they were so minor and so rare that they might have been the drive, they might not have been. I would tend to think they were, just because that's the only thing I can think of on this machine, but it could have been software stuff, it could have been any number of things. So I'm going to say that I have a win here. I was right. Running a modern game, high-end game off of a hard drive is perfectly fine. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll have some closing thoughts in just a minute. Okay, so a couple of final thoughts on this one. I just wanted to clarify, just so we're clear before I get the hate comments, because I know I'm going to get them. So one, I'm not advocating anyone use a 6-year-old Seagate Barracuda for this purpose. This was a baseline to give you a worst case scenario. You know, if you've got an old 1 terabyte 5400 RPM laptop SATA drive sitting around unused, I'm not advocating that you use that. It'll work, but you will probably notice performance glitches. You just will. 2, Cyberpunk was not cherry-picked. I chose it because it was the first game that came to my mind that I knew specifically advocated, do not use a hard drive with this, we want you to use an SSD. 3, as I said, I'm not advocating 500 gig 6-year-old drives. I'm advocating modern, high-performance drives. We're talking something like like an 8 terabyte Seagate Iron Wolf drive, something along those lines. You can get them. They look expensive. They can be had for cheap, though, if you buy them refurbished or on the local market. I'm trying to think what else. And then, yeah, and you saw, we measured at both. I mean, it wasn't a super long measure. It was kind of just a quick glance, but we ran max settings at 1080p, or I'm sorry, started at 4K and went to 1080p. So it didn't appear to be adversely affected by running higher or lower resolution. So look, say what you will. My opinion is, and you saw how fast it loaded. My opinion was there was nothing that occurred in that test to suggest that anyone, whether they're running a low-end build or a high-end build, would have an issue running a games drive that's a high performance hard drive. So you get a small SSD boot drive, a medium to large SSD for some modern games, and you load everything else, maybe your lesser played stuff, on that hard drive. And you're good. You have all of your games loaded. You don't have to sit and swap games around. Honestly, that would bug me more than a micro stutter here or there, but maybe that's just me. As I said, take it as you will. Anyway, thanks for watching the video.